Hey everybody, welcome back to the Honey and Absinthe After Hours podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Vincent.
I'm Janet, and this podcast is about all things art, business, and whatever we feel like.
Now today we are going to talk about how we started our own art business to make some serious money. Now, a lot of people may not know this, but I guess our close friends in animation know that you and I have been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah.
For about 6 years. 6 years ago, we started doing conventions.
Yeah.
And from that day forward, we've done about 30 to 40 of them. Yeah.
And everyone who typically starts doing something like this starts very, very young. I'm talking in the childhood.
Yeah, elementary school.
Yeah.
For me, when I was in elementary school, I would make these little tiny comics and I would photocopy them from the library and, sell them to people. And when I was in high school, I would get some Yu-Gi-Oh cards that were very cheap. I would take my paints and then paint on top of them, paint my own attack scores and defense points for them, paint over the names and the pictures, and sell those just as novelty items for, it made good money. I was able to buy video games with those when I was little.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
For me, it actually started in 3rd grade. I was 8 years old, and the teacher at the time wanted to teach us the basic rules of money and economy.
Wow.
So he printed fake money for all the students to use, and he would give them to everybody depending on how good of work that they turned in. And then once a month, we would have like a fair, like a merchant fair, and everyone would bring things from home to trade with each other with the fake money. I had a bunch of art, pastel paintings or drawings that I would do at home, and I brought them in, and turns out everyone loved them and they bought all my art, and I felt so validated at 8 years old.
Awesome.
But also at 8 years old, I also loved hoarding money because I didn't have any.
So while I was making a little baby profit spending it on like Left 4 Dead 2 or something when I was little.
Yeah, I would just keep all my money for no good reason. I would never spend it. So I took everyone's money and the economy collapsed.
It's like you planned it or something.
No, I just never felt the need to buy someone else's trinkets or toys that they would bring in. So no one had any money to spend, and I would just hoard it all.
Well, fast forward years and years later, we started doing the same thing, but on a bigger scale. Yeah.
So my first time as an adult selling my art was, we actually started selling around the same time. It was right before we graduated.
Yeah, for me, when I started selling my own art after I graduated, it was, if you guys listened to the last podcast, it was with my buddy Eugene. Follow him at Duke_of_flies at Instagram, where we sort of sold our prints and paintings, and we did a lot of commissions, and that really taught me the value of making personal, person-to-person connections with people, checking up on those people, and just sort of building rapport with people who are really into supporting artists. So that really opened my eyes to that sort of culture. And I really, really wanted to, when we got together, I guess this was like 6 months later, I really tried to convince you, hey, you should really try out this conventioning thing, because I know we're struggling to find work right now, but it can be a really fun way to earn a little bit of money.
Yeah. Well, before that, I had vended with a classmate of mine at a market called Open Market, and it was like a little free art fair for all the PCC community college students and art center students to apply to sell their art. I think it was just one day or the weekend, and I got to see the public's reaction to the art I was making in school. And I was able to sell some pieces, which made me really happy because they were just homework, essentially. And Yeah, that was like my first taste of it, and it felt good.
How did it feel?
It felt really good because
But it wasn't something that you really, really wanted to do.
No, I didn't really consider it because it wasn't like I made a whole lot of money, and it felt really difficult at the time.
Too much effort for not much of a return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to when we graduated and we got together, we did our first convention together.
Yeah, we did the convention that no one should do on their first time,
yeah.
which is the Creative Talent Network, CTN, here over there at the Burbank Marriott.
Yeah.
The reason why it's a terrible convention to do as your first convention experience, especially if your goal is to make connections, it's the best. It's the absolute best. There's no better place other than, currently there's Lightbox, but there's no better place than these sort of networking conventions to meet people in the industry, get their business cards, bug them online and emails or whatever, what have you. That's a fantastic resource. But if your goal is to make a profit and to, put your own personal work out there that has nothing to do with the industry, good luck at CTN.
Yeah, when going to CTN or tabling at CTN, you have to take into consideration the audience and what they are there for. You can't just expect to show up to any convention and be able to sell art when the audience isn't really there to buy.
Right. They're just there to sort of get their name out there.
Yeah.
A lot of the times.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do table at a convention like CTN to get their name out there, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
To $500 or $600. I don't know how much it is now, but at the time it was $500 for us. A normal Artist Alley table is usually around $200, $300. So $500 is a little pricey for a community that is not there to buy anything from you. So you can't really. I mean, we learned how to recoup our costs later on. We were able to make a lot of money at CTN, but for the average person, I don't think the point is to make money.
Right. I think it was the CTN where the speaker broke. People who frequent CTN will know. It's the CTN where the speaker broke. We had this really fun idea because everybody at CTN is too, what's the polite word for it? They're too, they don't want to do fan art because they're afraid of being perceived in a certain way.
Yeah.
But in all of our experience doing conventions, if you see everybody going one way, it's probably advantageous to go the other way. So what we basically did was we sold our the typical art that we sell at conventions, anime expos, and
at the time, a lot of fan art.
And that was the most profitable C10 we ever had. I don't know do you remember the amount?
Probably around 3,000.
Yeah, which is, usually at CTN we're going under, but that was the first time we made it on top. So now you guys know the secret. Now you're going to see a ton of fan art at CTN, which is great. I hope that happens. Come on. Don't put your homework up at CTN.
Yeah,
we know a lot of these people. We know that we know that a lot of the work up there is your homework. Come on.
Yeah. We did that, and that did not work out for us, and we learned to not do that.
No.
And at our very first CTN, we learned how to we didn't know at the time, but we were essentially starting a business.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. If you are selling something and making money off of your whatever you are selling, that is a business. And it can be as simple as that. Our first CTN didn't make very much money. We lost a lot of money.
We lost a lot of money, that's right.
I wasn't very excited to keep doing conventions.
Yeah, you were sort of at your last straw. You were like, I don't know about this conventioning stuff, but there's this, small little fair. I guess it's sort of like the OC fair, but not really. It's called 626 Night Market.
Yeah.
It's where a lot of Asian-centric food trucks and food vendors come, and a handful of musicians and artists and apparel vendors, just that kind of stuff go to congregate at. Sometimes I think it's at Arcadia. Sometimes it's at the OC, the OC
Orange
grounds.
County,
So we wanted to do that convention Well, that event, basically because it was totally free.
Yeah.
At the time, I don't know if you have to pay now, but at the time, you could be a vendor there for no cost. So we thought like, okay, so I tried doing Anime Expo. We tried investing a ridiculous amount of money on CTN. So let's go to the OC night market because it's free. I mean, I know we have to drive all the way to the OC, and I know it lasts from 2 to midnight, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah. And so we were able to make some money, but it just wasn't worth the investment, because when you're staying up till midnight, when it closes, and then you go home by then it's like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and you have to do it again tomorrow. And for the amount of money we were making, it just wasn't worth it, because people were, again, you have to pay attention to the audience. People were not there to buy things. They were there to try novelty food, essentially.
So one of the best things you can do if you want to do conventioning, and if you want to, get your feet wet with being a small business owner, make sure if you're going to go to an art fair or a convention, try your best to be an attendee first, because you're going to be you have all the advantage to like walk around and look at who your competitors are, what the audience likes, what they dislike. You just have so much to learn from being at the event you want to show at. Whereas you kind of, if you just roll up and not know what you're going to expect, you're going to be probably in for a world of pain, because you don't know what the audience wants. And the worst part is tabling at a convention where your work kind of just doesn't belong, and you can't cater to the people who are there in the first place. So for OC Night Market, people were there to eat. It's an eating event, first and foremost. I'm sure that they've expanded to becoming more of a general fair, but come on, people are paying admission to have a good time and eat those little lovely like potato chip curly things, and to try like takoyaki and that kind of stuff. Stinky tofu. A lot of the novelty stuff that you can't find, or you have to drive really far to find. So make sure when you're doing a convention, you know what you're getting into. Yeah.
But every single convention that we've ever done, we've learned something or gained something from, even if it was a failure.
Sure.
And one of our first really important failures was our very, very, very first shirt design.
Now, before I show my first shirt design, can you explain what yours look like first?
Well, so I don't have an example of mine because I don't have it anymore.
Right.
But it was a white t-shirt with my Sailor Moon drawing on it. And it was very plain, and I didn't have a style really yet. I was just banking on the fact that it's a Sailor Moon t-shirt, that people would buy it, and no one bought it ever.
Yeah. It was bad. Well, here's for everybody to see my very first shirt that I never wear. I just keep just for novelty's sake.
Yeah.
It is Link and Shovel Knight in one t-shirt, positioned in the belly area, which is probably the worst place to put your design. It's also a white t-shirt, which no one wants to buy because everyone's really shy about their physique. It's part of being human. Yeah, it's fine.
People rarely want to wear a white t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there were so many mistakes we made for this, and we invested a good amount of money on this.
Yeah, I forget, a few $100s.
Yeah.
We chose to go with a local print shop, just because we wanted to try screen printing. So there was a setup cost. It was just pretty pricey, but we were experimenting. Yeah. And that was the cost of our mistake, and that's the price of our learning moment.
We do these things now. This sweater, your sweater, the shirt under your sweater. Yeah. This wasn't first. Look there, that sweater, that jacket looks really sick. Yeah, there you go. This was, after we initially did our our little shirts, we didn't do apparel. So let's say that was about 2015. Yeah. So CTN was fall of 2014. OC Night Market was spring of 2015. So from spring of 2015 until 2017, we did not touch apparel at all.
No.
It was too much. We knew through this whole experience it was too much of an investment, and we didn't really know how to make a good shirt. I see a lot of times people just sticking their sketches onto a shirt. It's not that simple.
No.
You want to design something specifically for apparel. That means quick read, very iconic, not busy.
No.
But that took a lot of time to learn. And through the process of making buttons, making prints, and commissions, we finally figured out our way of doing apparel. But don't be tempted just because, you know, there are people like us and so many amazingly talented people putting their art on apparel. Don't be seduced by it. Start small.
Yeah.
Start with a button. Start with a enamel pin. Start with something small and then graduate to something bigger and bigger and bigger. Because that's what we did.
Yeah.
We knew very early on that we bit off more than that we can chew with this shirt.
Yeah.
Eventually we, you know, unfortunately had to just give it away to Goodwill.
Yeah.
And just know that these things, you know, they take time.
Yeah.
Don't be impatient about it.
A lot of learning. Like if you are going into conventions to be an apparel designer, then maybe you can start with shirts, but you need to put in your research to understand what apparel design calls for, I guess. You can't just you really can't just stick your print on a shirt. It's just not how it works. Every time we design apparel, we design for the item of clothing in mind.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of rules I have come up with about how I like our clothing to look like, and but that just took experience.
Yeah, and I think it's a process that's still evolving too.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping by the end of the year we're gonna have like a really good handle on it. Because even then, I still think there's a lot of stuff we could improve on.
Oh, yeah. We're still learning. We're still improving on process, which is why we are not entirely comfortable in sharing it. Because we don't want to give people like a roadmap to designing apparel. Yeah, to failure, essentially. We want to tell you, this is how we do it. And then you fail and you're like, oh.
The whole point of this podcast, too, is we are experimenting. Like you will know in the upcoming episodes with the weird, freaky experiments Janet and I are doing to promote our art and to make funny art. You know, not funny, but like just something that you've never seen before to you guys. And we want to make sure it works first. But like I know you have to wait for a little bit, but we will share this information to you guys. We're not like the other guys who kind of want to keep these things as trade secrets because they're afraid of competition. Yeah. Screw all of that. We're more confident than that. We will share all our methods to you as soon as we know that they work.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not like it's a secret.
No, it's not. It's really not. if you use Google really well, you can find a lot of this stuff out.
That's how we found out how to do a lot of this stuff. Yeah. But so after, our failure with the shirts, we were kind of, hi Biscuit.
Hey Biscuit.
We were kind of hooked on doing conventions.
You were starting to be like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
All this whole time we're still shipping out our portfolios. I think around this time I probably got hired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, around this time I probably got
theme parks.
At Theme Park Design. So I was basically good. I was earning a steady paycheck at a very, a good company.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to try again. So there was this convention coming up. It's not a secret to a lot of our friends, and hopefully by now that you and I are really into anime.
Yes.
Really, really anime. So we did this very small anime convention in the, I think, Anaheim Marriott, right?
Yeah.
The Anaheim Marriott in spring of 2015, which is Anime California. Mm-hmm. Very small convention. But, we learned a lot from it.
Mm-hmm. It was also kind of a failure.
Mm-hmm.
But we made a lot of friends.
We did.
There. People just like us who were kind of corporate by day and hustlers by night. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them were from Otis.
Mm-hmm.
One person I want to mention is Alex Cabal, who is... I think her name is Akabals with a Z. at the end. Follow her at Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And her friends, as well as like some other people were from Otis, and some of them were independent artists.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people we see almost every single time we do a convention. These are hustlers. These are straight up people who like work at their corporate job and do their 9 to 5, and at home they make content so that they can sell it at conventions. And some of these people, especially these Otis people, are really, really, really crazy hustlers.
Yeah.
They do conventions out of state. They don't mind flying.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to put their work out there. And I could tell the joy of, making that, person to person connection. It really drives them to push themselves to do the things that they do.
Yeah.
Oh.
I want to recommend a book.
Okay. It's not like you haven't been recommending it for the past 4 podcasts, but okay.
I really like this book.
Okay.
The 4-Hour Work Week.
Hold it closer for everybody.
Oh.
Yeah.
The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
If you want a copy of it, link down below for a free trial to Audible.
Have a listen.
Yeah, listen to it. And it's basically a book about how people like us were able to accomplish so much in so little time, and to be able to do what we were doing while we were working. All the people that we know and all what we were doing, we were essentially doing what this book was telling us. Without ever having read this book, we were just living by it.
Right. It's sort of like we learned a lot of stuff that I'm sure that book talks about by trial and error.
Yeah.
The hard way,
Yeah. Just being able to take advantage of the very small amount of time you have after work and on the weekends to be able to do more with less time. But anyways, back to Anime California. Why I call Anime California kind of a failure but also a success is that we found our strength.
Yeah.
The one thing that differentiates us from everyone else at conventions to this day, and it's our biggest ticket seller, and it's
what a lot of people come to us for, to be honest. Yeah.
And it's our commissions, and it's our ability to draw on site and quickly.
Now, the reason why we were able to do this so well was, like we mentioned in the previous podcast, if you haven't listened, take a listen.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how after we graduated, we went to a lot of drawing workshops. I think we went about 2 drawing workshops every week for about a year or more.
Mm-hmm.
And what that did was teach us to draw fast, to draw, as appealing as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And since we also did Inktober together, it also increased our ability to do line work.
Yeah, finished illustrations essentially, not just... Because most people can do one or the other. They can either do finished illustrations or they can draw fast. And very few people can put those two together and be able to pump out like a finished piece of art in under an hour to be able to give to someone at a convention.
Yeah, so the beauty of especially getting us to do commissions back then was we were so young and we were so kind of willing to prove ourselves that when you commissioned us very early on, we had a very, very low rate. What was our rate again?
It depends on the size.
It depends on the size, but let's say like a normal...
anywhere between $5 to $25.
Yeah, which is probably like really upsetting a lot of you older art people right now. Yeah. But when we were starting out, we just wanted to prove ourselves and we wanted to earn money, and a lot of it was simply just we wanted to prove ourselves and we wanted to like draw and we wanted to make people happy. And a lot of the times when especially people commissioned us to do kind of couple commissions and a lot of that type of stuff, it was really fulfilling to us to just see the expression on the person's face.
Honestly, we were not worth $100 yet.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we weren't worth whatever amount of money you think.
We had to work for it, for sure.
So like when you're that inexperienced and no one is willing to pay you for your art, you have to keep knocking down your prices until people are willing to pay you for that. And what that ended up doing is, on top of the workshops we were going to every week, we essentially had 2 or 3 days of full work days,
Yeah.
over the weekends, where it was like sink or swim.
To this day, when we do conventions, let's say the typical one is a 3-day. 3-day conventions or something like LA Comic Con or WonderCon. Very rarely do we do 4-day conventions like Anime Expo anymore.
Yeah.
But every single time, you think you know what fatigue feels like after your normal 9-to-5 animation job. You don't know what fatigue is like when you've done commissions, when you've nailed like 8 commissions in one day for 4 days at a convention. It will wreck you. If any of you guys have seen PTA's amazing movie, Phantom Thread, the fashion designer has this period where he's trying to make all these designs for his show.
Yeah, his big fashion show
and his
collection.
His big show comes out and he's really nervous and he's really particular and he's basically having a panic attack every 5 minutes. And the next, it cuts to him in bed, just like passed out, being taken care of by his lover. And that's what it feels like. It feels like you put everything into this thing, and for the next 2 or 3 days you are wiped. You are absolutely wiped.
And then we go to work.
A lot of the times we still go to work and we just kind of have to really and just like take it in. Work slow.
I was not lying when I said in that one viral video about me quitting my job at Disney, that I did throw up at work because I was overworked.
That wasn't a boohoo moment. That's real life.
No,
like we're not willing to shy away from real talk. That's exactly how that went down.
I have almost fainted before, several times actually, but so these commissions were our biggest, hottest item for Anime California, and that's such an important thing to find out. That like your number one thing that differentiates you and your winner, your hero product, your whatever, and that basically leads us to our next convention, and it was our first major success.
It was the very first success we've ever had. We, in Anime California, we had to pay for parking, which, you probably gloss over, but that, you pay $15 to $30 every day for parking. Those are two of your prints. So 2 of the prints belong to the Marriott, let's say, and that's something you just have to prepare for. There's a lot of little mistakes that happen when you're starting out. And it took 3 or 4 conventions for us to finally earn a profit. And for this convention, we went all the way to Las Vegas, Nevada, for this little tiny anime convention called Sabacon. And it was the first time we made a profit of about $2,000.
Yeah. And it was amazing because if you think about it, we'll reveal what our prices were at the time.
Of course.
We had 11 by 17 prints that we were selling for $15. Again, our commissions were like $5 to $25. But we weren't good yet. We could not price ourselves that high yet. And our buttons, we sold buttons, 1 for $3, 2 for $5.
It was the very first convention we did buttons, I think. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, and we still haven't raised our prices on buttons.
I think that's a really good kind of model for our buttons. They're very big, and people really like how much real estate there is to make really nice illustrations.
Yeah, and we did these little sketch cards, which are like drawn on little index cards, essentially.
From Staples.
Yeah, and we sold them for $1.
Yeah.
They were little doodles, more than doodles, honestly. They were like full-on illustrations.
Yeah, truly they were kind of just doodles that we would put on these index cards as we were waiting for orders or as we were waiting for customers.
Downtime.
Yeah.
And every dollar matters.
Yeah.
Every dollar counts. And because of how hard we hustled in that convention, we were able to make a profit of $2,000. And it was so crazy.
We have never felt so much overwhelming support. We got tipped for the first time. It almost brought you to tears. It was amazing.
What? You're gonna pay me more than I asked you to pay me? Okay. I guess I don't deserve this. Yeah, it was amazing. And versus now,
Yeah.
these are our prices now.
Yeah.
So on average, most of the time, we're gonna charge you $100 for a commission, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
Our prints are
$20.
$20 and up, depending.
Mm-hmm.
Our buttons are the same.
Mm-hmm.
And we have apparel, $30 to $50.
$30 to $50 for apparel. So that gives us a huge pool of people who could support us buying our little buttons, who go and really support us by buying our merch, like our sweaters and shirts, and people who really want to invest in us as artists, in our style and all of that, and want to commission us $100 or more for their favorite commission character, whatever it is.
Yeah. So, and that took many years of like increasing prices slowly.
Very slowly. Over the course of 6 years, guys. Again, this is 6 years where we slowly ramped up the prices.
Yeah.
Very slowly.
And how we go about increasing prices has very little to do with actually how much we're worth.
No.
It's more to do with the law of supply and demand. We literally, at a certain point, could not keep up with the demand of our commissions and some prints and stuff like that.
In our younger early years, we used to be able to do this a lot because we didn't have a lot of work to do outside of this activity. But now that I'm a working professional, now that you're a full-time art influencer, it's very, very difficult to kind of push ourselves to make a commission that, more than, like, just doing more than 2 or 3 can wipe us out very easily.
Yeah. So we went from like $25 commissions up to 30 and then 40 and then 50 and then 60, 80 and up.
And some of you might be thinking like, oh, come on, you guys can do more. Well, I don't know. I think it's strictly because we want to give the people really good product.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I feel ashamed to give somebody something that I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
So the reason why we're so fatigued after doing these commissions is because we want to give our people really good products that they keep forever and that they frame.
Yeah. And people know this about us now, and they come straight to us at the beginning of a convention, or they check and they make sure, like, is our list capped or not, because during a convention nowadays too, a lot of times we don't have time to do a convention because we're swamped. Yeah. We need to give people their prints, we need to give people their apparel and stuff like that. So the amount of time we actually have to sit down and draw something good, decent, that we are not embarrassed to give to someone is very little, actually. And so it takes time. And the reason why we had to increase prices too was just like, when we were younger and less experienced, we were begging for attention, we were begging for sales. And at a certain point, when we just simply can't handle the amount of people who want stuff, we have to increase prices. Of course. There's no way
it's a necessity
around it. Yeah.
At the end of the day. That
brings us to why we sell online now too. So after Sabicon, we were able to figure out essentially how to replicate this success, to do it again and again and again, and increase prices and all this stuff, so that we were consistently successful at almost every single convention that we went to after that moment. And that was like in 2015 or something like that. And we started building an audience, and people around the world were asking us to put our stuff online because they wanted it.
Because we'd post on social media, and we'd post all the time when we're at a convention. We tried our best to let everybody know through Instagram or whatever the app is. And a lot of people who are outside of the country see that stuff too and want to be a part of it.
Yeah. So we opened an online store. And we didn't do that earlier because it was just not worth it.
No.
Like, people need to understand that opening an online store is very, very, very different from selling in person.
And we do not recommend at all. If you have never made a person-to-person business transaction with your own art face-to-face, do not open an online store. Do not put your work out there.
Yeah.
Because you need to learn the skills of what it's like to, have that connection.
Yeah.
And you need to see people as people who are interested in your work, not just potential customers who could buy your art.
It's the psychology of sales. If you
Right.
just don't understand why people are buying your work, and the only way you can learn that is through selling your work in person, you are going to have such a disadvantage online. You won't know what sells. You won't understand why it sells, and you'll just be guessing all the time, and you'll be shooting in the dark.
I know it probably will hit your ego a lot if you're going to be conventioning and, things that you worked really hard on, people don't really get, and the weirdest things people really interested in. But even though it seems weird and arbitrary to you, no, really figure it out. Really analyze. Why is it that people bought this print over that print? Is it more iconic? Is it more colorful? Is it more eye-catching? Are people invested in this thing that you made versus this thing that although you put a lot of your passion into, probably doesn't read as well to other people? These are the types of things you want to figure out when you're making person-to-person transactions. It's really difficult to make this stuff happen online, especially if you don't have a following already.
Yeah. So the whole I know that with new technology and everything, there's a lot of print on demand things, like Society 6 and that kind of thing, that makes it a lot easier to open an online store. But I have a huge problem with that because
Elaborate.
yes, it's easier to sell your work online. Yes, it makes your work available to more people, and you don't have to have inventory or do a lot of the work itself. But
The hard
work,
boring work of checking up how much stuff that you have in your reserve, and then writing it down in spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff.
But you don't understand how important all of that is to running a business. Even though it's harder to start the old-fashioned way, to do it the hard way first, it's so much more worth it because you're learning skills that you're eventually going to need anyways. And the print-on-demand stuff, you don't have control over quality, and you don't have control over your profits. If you do it the hard way, you'd be amazed how much the margins are. Margins as in the price of how much you're making versus how much it costs to make the goods, cost of goods. And a lot of the times you're not making anything. You're making a very small percentage of each sale when you're selling things on Society 6 or whatever. But if you make your own prints and you ship your own prints and you handle all of those things on your own first, you're going to realize oh, I can be making a lot more money if I do this myself. Or eventually, if you're getting too many orders, you can hire people to do it for you, still be making more money than if you were using Society 6 or those kind of print-on-demand things. So yeah, work. At the beginning, I think it's better to work a little bit harder and to figure out these things on your own rather than to rely on those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something that whenever somebody tries to ask us over our DMs or face-to-face at conventions, how do you get to where you're at, we always tell them to start small and to, really start slow.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a while, and we're really excited to share a lot of the stuff with you guys.
Yeah.
So what's next?
So next, that brings us all the way to
That's right.
present
To right
day.
now.
Yeah.
So I know we glossed over a lot of stuff. One of these days, I think very soon, maybe during the summer, a huge series I want to do is to try to jot down and sort of have a storytelling time of almost every convention experience that we've had.
Yeah.
We have some amazing horror stories for you guys, some incredible stories for you guys to hear, and hopefully that you could learn from. But for right now, we kind of glossed over 4 conventions out of the 30 to 40. so now we are currently up to date.
Yeah. And so what's next? We are trying to grow the business now. Now that we have our online portion of our store and we have our in-person way of selling things, I had realized very early on that there was a major flaw in our business model, essentially, where if we were not at a convention, we were not making money, which is why I started the online store and everything.
Which is why you basically quit your job at Disney in the first place. It's because it ate up, having an animation career ate up every single moment you could have had growing Honey and Absinthe.
Yeah. And it became like impossible to grow our profits without me quitting my job and really putting everything into this business. So I realized that like, I am going to focus on the online portion of the business, which is why this YouTube channel even exists. I wanted to document everything, and I wanted to show people everything that we're trying to grow this part of the business.
Yeah, successes or failures or whatever it is.
Yeah. And something that I wanted to mention is that like we on average every year we make a profit about $10,000 in the business.
Consistently, right?
Yeah, consistently. And we don't take a cent out of the business. So we have our day jobs and we live on the money that we make.
Right.
But when we go off to do conventions and we make like a profit of however many thousands of dollars, we take that money and we put it straight back into the business.
We don't use it for Korean barbecue. We don't use it for getaways. We don't use it for hotels, whatever.
All that money goes into a separate fund. And it basically allows us to then, if we wanted to make a new line of clothes, if we wanted to do something like a comic one day, if one day we have enough money, we can make our own film. That is how we are going to pay for it. And so if you guys buy our merch, we're not taking money from the business. All of that will go straight back into one day making cooler and cooler things.
Yeah, you spent 2 years at DreamWorks and 2 years at Disney to save money.
Yeah, to save money so I can leave. I saved up about $50,000 so that I can focus on this business. I'm living on my savings right now while the business is making money because I want this business to thrive and succeed. If anything, we are investing more money into the business so that we can do bigger and better things.
Right. So what's the entire point of this channel?
The entire point of this channel is to show people that you can do this too. And it's not hard.
It's not.
Like we said, when we started this business, we didn't even know that we were starting this business.
Yeah, and the whole thesis of what you did, like what we're doing here is that you don't have to rely on the typical thing of what I'm doing, of working at a studio, which is something I love and that's very near and dear to my heart because I get to work with really talented and awesome people and we get to collaborate on one thing. You don't have to do that if that's not for you.
Yeah.
If you enjoy the adventure, if you enjoy the drama, if you enjoy the fight of making your own business, this is why we're doing this for you guys.
Like the past month or so after quitting my job and doing this has been the best month I think of my entire life.
And we'll talk about that at a certain podcast that's coming up very soon.
Yeah, it's been so fulfilling and so happy. I've been more happy than I've been in a really, really long time.
I can tell. I know we're going to talk about it much later in another podcast, but this whole experience that you and I have been going through, it feels like the good old days when we would just do conventions and not worry about our career or whatever it is. It just feels fun to hustle again.
Yeah. And it makes everything that I've done up to this point just like worth it. Yeah. I'm so happy. So that's it for this episode.
Yeah, that's it for this episode. We're going to give you guys more content about our experiences at different conventions, more art and business advice. and more tips and tricks once we know that they work.
Yeah. Please, if you'd like to support us, please go to honeyandabsinthe.com to support our merch. And if you'd like to follow us, we are on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok at Honey and Absinthe. And
Jingle our bells and buttons over here, I think.
Or here. We
Wherever
still
it is.
have not figured it out yet.
Yeah.
We know you want to.
Yeah. We know you want to.
And find us on Apple Podcasts
and Spotify.
Leave a review, that helps us out. Leave a comment down below if you like what we have, or if you have any suggestions of what you want to hear about in the upcoming episodes. And this is it.
All right. We'll see you later. Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.